Hello, everybody. This is Ken Brown with Transportation Energy Partners. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar. Today, we are going to focus, I think as everybody knows, next week, the Energy Independence Summit starts Wednesday, March 17th, 18th, and 19th in the afternoon with roundtable sessions. And then the following week will be Capitol Hill Week, where we'll have about 25 teams doing about 250 to 300 meetings with congressional offices by Zoom or some other, whatever your choice is of virtual meeting systems. So with that, let's move to the next slide. And what we're going to talk about today is how to make sure we're all prepared for our Capitol Hill Week meetings. So joining with me today is Tammie Bostik, Executive Director of Utah Clean Cities and also Vice President of the Transportation Energy Partners Board of Directors. So Tammie, thanks for joining me today. So we're gonna double team this. I'm gonna kind of go through the policy stuff and set the stage, and Tammie, based on her many years of experience, is going to talk about how to make your meetings successful and effective. So next slide, please. Want to thank all of our sponsors. Without your support, we couldn't be nearly as successful as we are, so thank you, sponsors. Next slide. Oh, we got two sponsor slides. There we go. Just as a reminder to folks, Transportation Energy Partners is a national nonprofit organization. We work with the nation's 85 or so clean cities coalitions and their 15,000 stakeholders in the clean transportation industry. We focus on federal policies, programs, and funding opportunities, and keep folks informed of those, and we educate decision makers about the importance of advancing markets for clean fuels and vehicles. Next slide, please. Again, next week, March 17th, 18th, to the 19th, the Energy Independence Summit starts. If you have not registered, I'm assuming most people on this webinar have registered, and that's why you're here. But if you haven't registered, there's still time. Also, I want to remind Clean Cities coordinators to recruit your stakeholders to participate in the summit and your Capitol Hill meetings. I know, for example, Clean Fuels Ohio has about 10 stakeholders participating. Utah Clean Cities has around 10 participating. Eastern Pennsylvania has a bunch of stakeholders, and many other coalitions do. So this is a great opportunity. Your stakeholders don't have to travel to Washington to join you in the meeting, so it's a great opportunity to include them. So again, we encourage you all to reach out to your stakeholders and include them. It will make your meetings more effective. It'll make our overall effort more effective in winning improved policies and increased funding. Next slide, please. Again, just as a reminder, on March 17th, 18th, and 19th, during the hours of 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on each of those days, we will have roundtable meetings with administration leaders, congressional leaders, and industry leaders. We already have Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, EPA confirmed, and a number of other folks. So it's going to be, we'll have good sessions. And then again, throughout the week of March 22nd and to the 26th, we'll have approximately 300 virtual meetings with House and Senate offices. Next slide, please. So again, just to remind folks about the impact that we all have by participating in the Energy Independence Summit and remaining in touch with your congressional offices throughout the year. It makes a huge difference, number one, to do this year after year, and number two, to do it not only during the Energy Independence Summit, but throughout the year. Lots of victories were achieved by us and you and all of our allies in the clean transportation industry. And you can see them here, but we were able to extend the tax incentives through 2021 for natural gas, propane, fueling infrastructure, and fuel cell vehicles. The year before, the biofuels industry was successful in extending their tax credits through 2022. Clean Cities funding is now at $40 million. There were $20 million for EV community partner projects, and also language to directing DOE to develop a plan for clean school bus grants. The EPA DERA program was increased to $90 million. We were successful in getting language in the Transportation Appropriations Bill directing Federal Highway Administration to resume funding for clean vehicle projects if the final assembly is in the U.S., and to respond to Buy America waivers within 60 days. And while we didn't make it over the finish line, we did see our Clean Cities Authorization Bill passed twice by the House of Representatives. And this year we're going to get it over the finish line. Next slide, please. So what is the outlook for this year? Obviously, things have changed dramatically here in Washington, as evidenced by just moments ago, the House of Representatives passing a $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill that was proposed by the new Biden administration. That bill will be signed presumably before the end of this week. And that opens up opportunities and sets the stage for the next major pieces of legislation that are going to move forward. I think, as everybody knows, the new administration and congressional leadership will be very focused on climate change, infrastructure, and a robust and sustainable economic recovery as the next piece of action. And so the next really two big things that are going to happen that we all care about is, one, the administration and Congress are working on major infrastructure legislation that will include significant clean energy provisions. And then number two, the annual congressional funding appropriations process is going to begin very soon. Next slide. So TEP has put together with allies in the industry, has put together a detailed memo and a letter to President Biden and congressional leaders with our priorities for this major clean energy and infrastructure bill that's coming. And so these are our priorities for that. One is to include extension and enhancement of the various clean fuel vehicle and infrastructure tax incentives, and to have those extended not just 1 or 2 years at a time, but through 2030, so that they are ongoing and send a clear signal to the markets and to the vehicle manufacturers and fuels providers that that they have clear incentives and clear marching orders on how to move forward, and it'll send clear signals to the markets. And obviously, we've been arguing for longer-term tax incentives for a long time, and hopefully we'll be able to include those in this legislation. Second, we want to see major investments in existing clean transportation programs. One is to include authorization of the Clean Cities program, and then to include $1 billion in funding for deployment. Most of you may remember in 2009, the last time we had a major stimulus proposal like this. There was I think there was a little more than $300 million that went to the DOE Clean Cities program. And that funding led to thousands of vehicles and hundreds of new fueling stations that were put out there. Second, $1 billion for the CMAQ program to support state and local initiatives to transition fleets to cleaner fuels and vehicles. $1 billion for the Federal Transit Administration to transition the nation's buses to cleaner fuels. $1 billion for the Department of Transportation Clean Fuel Corridors program for infrastructure. And in addition, including funding for signage and measures to ensure parity with federal highway signage between alternative fuels and traditional gas and diesel. $1.5 billion for the EPA diesel emission reduction grants, including updating the DERA program to ensure funds go to fuels and vehicles that provide the greatest reductions in greenhouse gases and other pollutants. We want to make sure the renewable fuel standard works as intended and expands volumes, and we eliminate unnecessary waivers. Next slide, please. We want to include practical Buy America policies that will advance U.S. businesses and jobs, but understand the complexity of vehicle manufacturing markets and supply chains, so that the programs can move forward. And finally, we want to ensure that this massive infusion of federal clean transportation investments meet the needs of underserved communities, particularly lower income communities, communities of color, and small and rural communities. So that is going to be a major focus of our effort. And we'll be sending out email blasts on this, but our letter to President Biden and congressional leadership with these 5 points is going to be up on our website, and we're going to ask folks to sign on to that letter and to encourage your stakeholders to sign on to that letter, so we can build as much support as possible for these provisions that we're going to be fighting for over the coming weeks and months. Next slide, please. The next major item is the annual appropriations process, which is going to begin soon. Our priorities this year include $60 million for the Clean Cities program, including $35 million for competitive grants, increasing the EV community partner grants up to $30 million, increasing the DERA program up to $100 million, and working to make sure that our language from last year requiring the Federal Highway Administration to resume CMAQ funding of clean vehicle projects is actually implemented. Next slide, please. To remind people of the appropriations process, since this will be an item of discussion in your congressional meetings, your Zoom meetings, member requests, it hasn't been quite announced yet, but it's coming soon, but congressional members are going to have their priorities into the appropriations subcommittees beginning in April, and some of the deadlines may move into May. The appropriations subcommittees will actually move their legislation. They probably won't start till late April, early May, and some may go, probably the Senate will go into June before they pass their bills. We'll see House and Senate floor action in the summer, and it may go into August, September, and then final appropriations legislation sometime in the fall. Next slide, please. I want to remind people to feel free to put questions in the question box, and we'll take some of those. Just a reminder, here are some of the key appropriations leaders. We have a few new leaders. Obviously in the Senate, the Democratic folks are now in the majority and setting, chairing the subcommittees, while the Republicans are now in the minority. So in the Senate now for Energy and Water, we have Senator Dianne Feinstein, who's now the chair. We have a new ranking Republican, who's John Kennedy from Louisiana. The House members here are the same. On the Senate Interior and Environment Appropriations Subcommittee, which funds EPA, now Senator Merkley from Oregon is now the chair. And we have a new chair on the House side, which is Shelley Pingree from Maine. Next slide. And then for the Transportation HUD Appropriations Subcommittee, we have a new chair on the Senate side, who is Brian Schatz from Hawaii. And the rest of the folks are the same. Next slide. Again, our appropriations strategy, when you're doing your virtual meetings, week after next, you should find out your House and Senate members' request process and appropriations deadline, and then we'll work with you to follow up with either a member request form or a letter, depending on what they ask for. It's very helpful to show coalition stakeholder support in those letters and forms, and then we're going to ask you to help us follow up with each congressional office after you submit your request to make sure that they submit our requests to the various House and Senate appropriations subcommittees. Next slide. And again, we're going to work with the Federal Highway Administration, and if necessary, include language again this year in the appropriations legislation, and possibly in infrastructure legislation, to make sure that funding is resumed for clean vehicle projects. Next slide. Finally, last year we had legislation introduced by Congressman Donald McEachin from Virginia, with help from Virginia Clean Cities, to formally authorize the Clean Cities program. The legislation calls for expanding the program to serve all 50 states, to ensure that the program benefits underserved communities, to increase funding to at least $100 million a year, and then to have the funding allocated in the following way, that 20% would go to DOE technical support of the coalitions, 30% for direct funding to support the coalitions, and 50% for competitive grants for deployment. And again, that bill was passed by the House twice last year, and we're working hard to get it over the finish line and signed by the president this year. I will add that our bill is the House Energy and Commerce Committee just introduced a comprehensive clean, I think it's called the Clean Future Act, which is a whole comprehensive clean energy bill, and our Clean Cities authorization language is included in that bill this year. Next slide, please. So I'm going to first look at a few questions before, and then we're going to turn it over to Tammie and focus on preparation for the Capitol Hill Day meetings. And Tammie, you can help me answer these questions. Let's see. Yes, we can provide the slides and a recording. Does anyone have insight on the EV partnership projects? Yes, I think this past year was the second year in a row that there was funding for the EV community partnership projects, and they were included in a broad-based FOA funding opportunity announcement from the Vehicle Technologies Office, and I anticipate that the $20 million included in last year's appropriations bill will be done the same way. In my most recent communications with the DOE Vehicle Technologies Office, I'm thinking that a FOA will probably be coming out in April or May with that $20 million, and I'm anticipating some other funding opportunities for the Clean Cities coalitions this time around with last year's $40 million. So there's $40 million for Clean Cities, of which some of that should come out in competitive grants, and then there's an additional $20 million for the EV partnership projects, which will likely be included in the same funding opportunity announcement. But we will hear more from DOE, in fact, for sure, on that next week from the summit. We'll get it directly from DOE at the summit. Awesome. Let's see what the next question is. Is clean school bus funding for electric buses or all fuels? Good question. In the language in the appropriations bill, there was some emphasis on electric, but also language stating that it should be in for all fuels. And for that language, there's no funding from last year, but it directed DOE to look at the development of a clean school bus grant program, number one. Number two, the biggest, in our infrastructure proposal, we're suggesting that the clean school bus grant funding not go to DOE, but instead go to EPA DERA program, because they have an already effective standing program. And we are urging and recommending that it be all fuels. And in fact, we're discouraging that the funding be used for diesel replacement, that it should all be used for alternative fuels, since you get more emissions reductions, whether it's electric, propane, natural gas, or even using, committing to use biodiesel. For example, you get more emissions reductions over diesel replacement. So that's what we're proposing as part of the infrastructure legislation, number one. And number two, I will add, we're going to have a session at the summit next week entitled something like, how do you effectively spend $1 billion in clean school bus funding, since there's so much focus on clean school buses now. And we'll talk about the importance of balancing that funding between all different kinds of fuels. So that's the answer to that question. I'm going to take one more question now. Let's see. I'm not sure what this question means, so I think what we're going to do is move on to tips, and then we'll come back to questions, because we got a few more questions here. But let's, I'm going to now turn it over to Tammie, who's going to talk to us about how to make your meeting, maximize the effectiveness of your meetings, and how we're going to navigate the challenges and opportunities of doing them by Zoom. So go ahead, Tammie. Next slide.
Fantastic, Ken. Thanks for all the great information, and thanks to all of you for being here today. It's exciting. This is the most exciting time of the year for us, one of the most exciting. And every year I always start out by saying, this is the most exciting time to be involved with transportation. And this year it is. So I say, hang on to your steering wheels and your hats, because this is going to be a great year. And keeping in mind that we do have a new administration, which is exciting, but there also is a big learning curve. So how do we best communicate this great amount of information and make sure that's meaningful and memorable? So why is education of policymakers so important? They need to know what we're doing, right? So it builds your organization. It increases the visibility, which is so important. It brings more members to the table, and certainly more funding. It advances your policies. It advances the policies as a Clean Cities organization, and also statewide. So the things that your state is focused with helps you educate your policymakers, and certainly influence the debate. And we all like a good debate, and we're really looking forward to it being civil again. So that's exciting. Build long-term relationships, and that's the truth of this, is that the more you build these relationships, the longer and more enduring they continue to be, and you build on them. Each year you go to DC, you have that connect and say, you know, that project that you were interested in, we're doing it now. Thank you so much for your funding. Thank you for your support. Thank you for leaning in. Thank you for coming to our meeting. The advocacy promotes your organization with key policymaker, and that's always so important. So great. Next slide, please. This is a great statement, and it's the truth. Relationships, 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 and we know that it is the currency of policymaking in Washington, D.C., for better or for good. We're for good, so we're on the light side, and it is indeed true across the country. Identify ways you can help your elected officials. And again, I mean, they're busy people, and so how do you help them understand what information you're bringing to them? Be sure that you have a good source of ideas and information. Make it memorable, right? Provide opportunities for visibility and media coverage. We're working on a press release for you right now. You'll be able to customize it for your state, for your coalition. So that's another great opportunity. Also, when you reach out to the media with your press release, say, hey, I'm available to speak with you. You know, reach out to me, let me know. I'm happy to give you in-time updates on what's happening with us in our virtual DC. Introduce them to key constituencies and community leaders. These are your stakeholders. These are your board members. Make sure they know that these folks are being, supportive, and that their businesses, their private-public partnerships are indeed enhanced by their support, their attention, and leaning into the table of saying, hey, what do you need? And again, to build relationships with local, state, and national offices is essential. It happens on all 3 levels, and TEP helps us do that. So next slide, please.
Yeah, I want to.
Oh,
Yeah,
go
I was
back.
just going to say, I was going to amplify just on that it's important to remember that every House member and senator has not only they have a Washington office, but they have offices back home, and those each serve an important function, and relationships with both are important. The folks back home have their ear to the ground, and they know what's important politically, and they know what events are important, and what projects are important, while the people in Washington, they're kind of removed a little bit from the projects back home. So they need to know about the projects so they can connect them to the legislation. But if you're talking about funding or legislation, you need to communicate with the people in Washington, because they're the people who work on that. So just wanted to amplify that. And both relationships are really important to develop. And I know Tammie has done that with her delegation.
And Ken, that's a fantastic point, and I shouldn't have brushed over it so quickly. So thank you for circling back on it, because that is important. And it almost always happens that all of our delegates say, be sure and work with our state office, be sure and work with my local office, and invite them to your next ribbon cutting, to your next stakeholder meeting, to your next event. And we do, and they come. And so that's a key piece. And so don't overlook the fact, again, that it is your state, it is your national, and your delegates come from your state. And so there is that great connection. So be sure and connect with your local state office. And again, invite them to your events, stay connected, and they communicate with each other. It happens all the time. So good point, Ken. Thank you.
And the more you do the local stuff, that gives you leverage on the Washington people who are doing the policy stuff, because they want their policies to reflect what local people are doing and what they're interested in. So they really feed on each other. So
exactly.
Good job.
We find that to be very, very true. And we work with our Congress leaders locally all the time. And they come to our events. So that's a key piece, and they share it. And and of course, then, the federal folks like to say, we made this possible. So give them the opportunity too. So next slide, please. So all politics are local, and that is true, and we know that. And so as we educate our officials about the values and the benefits of clean transportation in our area, be specific and make sure you provide the facts and figures on how clean vehicles, advanced technologies and fuels are creating jobs. That's huge, right? And benefiting the local area. Be really specific. Say, oh, well, they can work on this or that or the other. Be specific. And I recently wrote an op-ed for our paper, which comes out on Sunday. And I specifically lined out how it's a great transition for the folks who work in the extraction industry to move and be reskilled into these new technologies. And those are important to be very specific so those things stick. Again, the folks you're going to be in front of, they're busy, so make sure that your points are memorable and they stand out. Provide examples of local projects and programs in action. And I am going to take a couple minutes to just show you how we do that in Utah and what kind of information we provide to show and leave with the delegates and send back to them. So, and I'll go over that a little bit more, how we follow up. But we also always demonstrate a broad-based and bipartisan support of the issues that we're bringing to the table. That's also important to know that you have the support of everyone on both sides of the table, and that you're able to work the middle of the aisle and bring everyone to the table where there's that benefit piece, right? And also, I always emphasize public and private partnerships, especially if you're from a more Republican-leaning state like I am. It's very important to show that the infusion and the seed money of federal dollars in your state creates the multiplier effect. And we always say, the Clean Cities program, for every federal dollar we bring in, we multiply it by 10. And then we always say in Utah we do it 15, but that's just our little emphasizing piece. But it's true, we do bring, and there's no other federal program that multiplies the dollars like we do through the Clean Cities program. So be proud of that and make sure that that's a lasting impression you leave. Okay, next slide, please. So sometimes you'll have questions come up to you, and it's often hard to keep track. I mean, just everything that Ken presented at the beginning. Sometimes it's you'll get hit with a question and it's like, well, I'm not certain of that. Put a smile on your face, and the best thing is, we always try to fake it till we make it, but don't do that in this case. Say, you know what, I'm not certain, but I will find the answer for you, and I will circle back with you. I'll get back with you. It's a great opportunity to re-engage. So always take the opportunity to say, I'm not certain, but I'm curious about that too. Let's find out more information, and I will make sure that I answer that question for you to the best of my ability. Always send thank you notes, and that's a great opportunity when you circle back with them to get their appropriations deadlines. Be sure and thank them in person. We always have a note ready to leave and say, thank you, but always the re-engagement piece is where we have the best success, I find. Of course, being there is huge, but we re-engage and re-engage. So stay in touch. Send reports, send newsletters, and regular updates to their staff. Build relationships. Typically when we walk into the offices, you'll see their interns. It's like, hey, where are you from in Utah? And they'll tell you, and you share, and that's great. It creates a great atmosphere, and then you meet with your delegates, and so next year that's even more important. But so this year we have a particular challenge because we're doing things virtual. Make sure that you send notes. You can send a virtual note, send a personal note. Just make sure that you re-engage. It makes a difference. Again, like we said, invite them to local events. It's important, and it does make a difference, and they will come. Identify opportunities for media coverage. And again, send out your press release and offer to do interviews, offer to write an op-ed, stay engaged. Make sure that you're touching the pieces that your state legislations are in session right now or just wrapping up, and how that relates to federal stuff. So inform yourself and be ready. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is one of the challenges for this year, and I know that it's been a real heavy lift for Ken, and he's made it really quite easy for us, but this piece really needs to have your support. So please lean in and listen closely, because this is an important piece. So TEP is going to help with scheduling. Jake's already reached out to all of us and asked who's coming, and he's setting that all into motion. The team leaders will need to get a Zoom link and other links for each meeting and provide it back to TEP. And here's the cool piece, is that the meeting schedules will be linked and posted on the Summit website. So this is important. So I know I have about 15 folks who are looking at coming with me and joining me. They're all super busy, and so they might say, oh, I'm available this afternoon. They can very easily get on the TEP website and say, oh, okay, great, I can get on and be in that meeting with Senator Romney, or I can get in with this representative. So it's essential that you don't lag, and that by the end of this week, you've created those Zoom links and sent them out to all your participants, and most importantly, get them to TEP so they can be published on the website. That's going to be our portal of information. So please make sure you do that. Very, very important, so we can ensure that this is a seamless virtual experience. Ken, anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, that's it. Just that that's how it's going to work this year. It's got a little extra step in it. The great thing is it's going to create an opportunity for more stakeholders to participate, because they don't have to travel to DC. And some may not be able to do all 8 meetings during the week. Maybe some can do 4 and somebody else can do 2, but it's a great opportunity to involve more people. So get your stakeholders registered so they can participate. And again, if you have questions, contact either Jacob or me. And the people, it's just the team leaders who are usually Clean Cities coordinators for each of the states, are the people who have to get the link. So so coordinate with Jake. Jake's going to have to give you the schedule, right? First, you can't do the link unless you know when the meeting is. Then you're going to need to get the link. Then you're going to need to give the links back to Jake. And then the cool thing is that they'll all be posted on the Summit website. So you can, if you're from Utah with Tammie's team, you can just click with Utah. It'll show Tammie's 8 meetings during the week, what time, and each meeting will then have a link next to it. You just click on the link at the right time, and boom, you're right into the meeting. So again, that's how it's going to work. It's going to be a little, it'll be a little cumbersome, but like everything else we've been working on during the past year, if we focus on the details, it'll work great, because the technology works, and and it'll be cool. So,
Yep.
and we'll be able to get that much more done.
Yeah, again, so please help us make this successful. And as soon as you get your information from Jake, make sure that you create those links ahead of time. We're actually going to create our links and then pop in the information so we can be time effective. So I would recommend doing that if you can. Okay, next slide, please. So here, I actually want to share some things with you. We always put together a packet and was inspired when we first started going to the hills and looking at the different packets. One of the best ideas that I saw originally was looking at your state and looking at your delegates and looking at their districts. And so we always create a piece. So prepare a one-page handout with a background on your organization and examples of local projects. Again, you may have a 6-page presentation, but make it a 1-pager in the end so they can very simply look at that and say, here's the ask. They're very specific. Keep them, very much in line. There will be some bigger pieces, but make sure that you have a very clear 1-pager. Use examples of local projects in action. Visual displays are extremely helpful, and hold a team prep meeting via Zoom next week. And we've done this. We already actually did this week. I wanted to share, I'm just going to take a couple minutes and share with you what our materials look like. And Catherine's going to help me share my screen. And we're putting this together as a pamphlet, and we'll also send it electronically. So show my screen. And hopefully it's showing my second screen. Are you seeing cute kids or my
We got kids.
okay,
Cute kids.
so cute kids. How do I get to my other screen? Do I do that? Maybe I won't be able to do that. How do I show a separate screen? Let's see, screen monitor 2. How's that? Is that one showing up? Energy Independent Summit?
Ah,
Okay.
bingo.
All right. Well, cute kids were cute, but here we go. Okay, so basically this is the pamphlet we put together. And this is our districts. Now this is super impactful because when you work with your individual representatives, you can say, you're in District 1. Here's the projects we're working on. We color code it and show that, EV Zion is down in District 2, which is a large district. You can also see that Utah is very gerrymandered. So, but anyway, we have these projects and we like to show where they are. And this is hugely impactful, right? So here's our DOE projects that we currently have in Utah. Again, you put in those pieces where you're advancing fuels, infrastructure, public-private partnerships. And then we go into detail on the projects that we're currently involved with, which is our EV Zion and Core West, and who's involved with that. So we can show that we're working with, 8 other clean cities, right? And then we show our partnerships. This is not a finished piece, but we wanted to show it. So we work with Utah State University, and they have 6 DOE vehicle technology grants. And we are somehow involved with all of those. So we want to emphasize that. We want to show that the university is doing, specific projects. We also want to show our Inland Port Authority and how they're working with the projects and how they're working with utilities. They're working with our public transportation agency. Then we also want to show, again, that we're working with our major utilities, which is Dominion, which provides electric and renewable natural gas. Helping America's Rural County, that's a TEP grant, so we're excited to be involved with that. And then we have some new exciting hydrogen projects which are starting. We always emphasize that we're working on corridors, so that's another piece and then we just sort of show, here's our stakeholders. Here's the folks we work with, right? And then we kind of ended up by saying, here's what the Clean Cities program is about. And this is information. These are our annual report pieces, right? So this is why we collect that information. You bring up how many stations are in your state. We love to show that in Utah alone, we use 5 million gallons of gas and diesel daily, right? And then we show what we do in our program with alternative fuel vehicles, idle reduction, and fuel economy. And then we just do local news, our idle free, our declarations we do with the governor. And then we wrap it up by showing who we are and who our board members are. So that's kind of our piece. And then we, include the press release, and then we include the materials from TEP. But we also create a one-pager with those specific asks, and we haven't finished that yet. But so I'll quit sharing that and go back to the main screen and our slideshow. Okay.
I want to emphasize what a great job you did there, Tammie. That was really good. And three things I think that are really important in it, just to emphasize. One is it's highly visual. So it's not just words, it's visual. You can see stuff. A lot of people increasingly seem to retain more information that way. Number two, it's important, like who you are. And when I think of the who is your stakeholders and your board. People pay attention to that. That's where your leverage and your influence comes from, is partly from who you are, and then it's what you do, which you also talk about. And your influence and excitement comes from your passion and your results from what you do. And all of that gives you a great ability to communicate and be effective.
Thank you. Yeah,
and if you send that to Jake and me, we will create a link so that people can view that as an example if they want to create something similar.
Yeah, I was going to offer that. Let me finish our one pager just to show what that would look like ideally. And again, I mean, after we send this, we show it. We'll have a PowerPoint presentation. We'll show it as a PowerPoint. We'll send this. We're actually physically printing it and FedExing it to our offices, so they'll have a printed copy. So those pieces, so they can go back and look and say, gosh, you know what? Utah Clean Cities was talking about their project with, and I swear that they were working with, so you want to have them, have those memorable pieces of who you are, what you're doing, who you're working with. And honestly, I mean, if you have good board members like we do, be sure and show that, and be sure and show your stakeholders, because those are their constituents. They want to know that they're pleasing them and that they're doing stuff to help them. So again, I would say, if you haven't done it already, hold a team preparatory meeting and share your materials that you're going to share, and make sure that you've covered your stakeholders. They may say, hey, I have this project that, that happened with us yesterday with Utah State. It's like, I didn't even know you had that project. Awesome. So cool stuff. All right, next slide. So again, when you arrive, the sample meeting agenda is you introduce your team and whoever's with you. Here's my board president. Here is the head of the Department of Transportation. Here is someone from the governor's office. Here's someone from here's our mayor. Whatever you may say, you want to definitely call out your dignitaries that are with you, your great stakeholders, and your team. Again, provide examples of local clean fuels success stories and projects in action. Request for action. Again, infrastructure bill requests. These are huge, and you want to be showing that you're working on that. That's a part of our program, right? We build out infrastructure and we do deployment of advanced fuels and vehicles. Increase funding to our Clean Cities programs, which we're nimble, we're boots on the ground, and how these federal programs help support advanced and alternative fuels. And then again, this is a key piece, and we always say this in our work, that every fuel we work with, and there are 12 fuels that the Clean Cities program work with, and then we have some specific stateside fuels that we work with more extensively, but they are all available in a renewable source. And we often say, just like at the end of a charger, wherever that electricity came from, it's electricity at the end. Same thing with natural gas or propane, and all of those are available in a renewable form. Important pieces. And then ask them for questions, and then ensure that you follow up with those questions. And again, you don't have to have the answers. Just say, I'd love to follow up with you that and give you some more information. And remember, we have technical support, and they're fantastic for helping you prepare really amazing responses. So please use them as a source. They're there for you. Next slide, please. So because you know that these people are time constrained and their attention, I mean, they're popping from one meeting to the next. How do you be memorable, be brief and to the point? Expect 15 to 30 minutes. Try to hone it down to as tight as you can be. Keep it short and leave time for questions. Focus on specific requests for actions. You're going to want to leave and they're going to want to know what you're asking for. Obviously, more federal support, continual federal support, and their interest. Tailor your pitch. Be ready. Practice it. Be factual. I mean, use up to date, use a fact sheet. Jeff's great about providing that to you. Bring a cheat sheet if you need to be precise. Have some little notes, but you know, have your stump speech ready. It's important. Know the opposition, know what their pros and cons are. I mean, you know, take a brief look at your delegates and say, they weren't really so interested in that. If they're not really interested in electrification projects, maybe de-emphasize them or show where it's so important that they lean into it. Make sure that they know you're fuel neutral and that you're supporting everything and that everything needs to be on the table. I think especially with this new administration and we see an emphasis on particular, you know, fuels, especially electrification, that's exciting. And a lot of my projects are electrified, but I always bring in everything. You know, our corridors are for all alternative fuels. We're so excited to be working with all of them. Emphasizing rural, we're building out rural infrastructure. What can we do to support that? You know, always be sure that you have those little great pieces that they can remember and they know, and make sure your visuals relate to that. Always be respectful. You're going to have people disagree with you, and you know, and respect their view. I'm excited to believe, and I do believe this. That civility will come back into our debate and our work. And I remember having a representative say, all right, I'll look at your advanced fuels if you'll look at nuclear options for Utah's clean energy. And it's like, okay, I will. I'll look at it more closely. Thank you for your time and thank you for your interest. So wasn't necessarily my most favorite topic, but I was respectful and that was our agreement. So be ready for those things. Next slide. So here's the assistance that TEP has for you for Capitol Hill Day. Building teams with stakeholders. We're here to help you. Please let us know how we can do that. You most likely have that already, but you know, and typically this is more of information when we're on, and you know, when we show up in DC, Ken and his team are fantastic with saying, hey, we're going to put this industry leader with you, and we're going to, you know, help you out and combine you, and so TEP help. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in addition, we will be doing that again this year. So, you know, for example, we have certain sponsors who will be sending people, and they might be national companies. And so we're going to hook up people with some of your teams, and we'll let you know in advance who they're going to be, so you can coordinate with them. The coordination piece is going to be a little trickier this time, obviously, because we can't just like go out in the hallway at the summit location in DC and kind of huddle and say, you do this and I'll do that. So everybody's going to have to put in a little extra effort in coordinating and communicating with people on their team in advance of the meeting, if possible, in advance of your congressional meetings.
And maybe, I mean, as you set up your Zooms, maybe even assume that you're going to get on a little bit early with your team and maybe do that kind of in the hallway huddle, you know, and
that's very smart. I would highly recommend that. So if you have a 2:00 meeting with the congressional office, everybody should jump on at 1:45.
Yeah.
And you can go over, and it'll be just like in Washington, where, you know, sometimes the first meeting's a little rougher than the rest because you got to hit your stride. Mm-hmm. And your meetings will get better. And if you do that kind of preparation, and if you do a few minutes of debrief after the meeting of what happens, it'll make it, you'll learn and you'll be able to build on that. That's a great idea, Tammie.
Great. Well, I know that by the end of the day, we're smoking, right? I mean, it's just so exciting because you refine your message and you really kind of work through your materials. So, you know, like they always say in a TED Talk, this is a TED Talk. practice, get in front of your camera, practice, know what your talking points are, and, even ask your team, what stood out to you to be the most memorable? Let's re-emphasize that. And then you can build and say, Representative so-and-so said that they were very interested in partnering with us. Would your district be interested in working maybe with us in conjunction with a rural project? So show those connective pieces, because most of them are colleagues and friends, even if they're on different sides of the aisle. Again, emphasizing bipartisan support. Scheduling meetings, please help us with that. Make sure that you have your Zoom meetings in order and that everyone has the information, especially us and your team. Sample appropriations request letter. That's the same as last year, but we just basically, you circle back and say, when do we have to have our specific request back to you with, so that's kind of like so when do you do your appropriations? And we know what that timeline is, but they'll have specific timelines. Be sure and follow up with that, right? Talking points and handouts on federal policy. Tech will be providing that to you. It's essentially the stuff from Ken's slides. And then a sample local press release. My team is putting that together and we'll have that to you by Friday. Typically, and at least with our media, we send out it on Friday and then we have it scheduled to go out on Monday or Tuesday or the day before the events. So it's fresh on people's mind. And again, ask the media to reach out to you. And is that our last slide? Again, so I'll let Ken jump in. Thank you for your time and listening, and that was a lot of information. Please reach out to me if you need anything, and we will, when we finish up this slide and have our one-pager done, our pieces, we're so happy to share with everyone as an example. Please do a map on your one-pager of your districts. That's really impactful, and it helps your delegates make sense of where the projects are happening. Thank you.
So here's a question for you, Tammie. Do you hire somebody to help you with your visuals?
We do everything in-house, actually. It's a wonderful process because we kind of team it together. We call it wordsmithing and workshopping it, but we do our own. We work in Canva, which is really quite a friendly piece. So, but yeah, we do it in-house.
You got some skills and some skilled people working with you. It's impressive.
Well, thank you. I do have a great team. Thank you.
Let's see. This is a good question. Appropriate attire. So you should view these as business meetings. My guess is you could be a little more casual. I'm not sure you have to wear a coat and tie, but I would definitely look professional. I mean, it's a business meeting. Don't come in your sweatshirt or your t-shirt. At least wear a collared shirt. Might want to wear a sport coat. If you want to wear a tie, wear a tie. I don't think ties are mandatory, but approach this as you would if you were if you were making a sales call via Zoom, or if you were making something, if you're in a nonprofit organization, if you were making a fundraising pitch, or you were trying to recruit a new board member. Approach it like that. Very good question. Let's see what else we got here.
Well, Ken's making. I'm gonna double back and double down on professionalism. The Clean Cities program, we've asked to be an authorized program where we're elevating our program through additional funding and opportunities. The more professional you can be, the more memorable, and I think it's important. And you feel good, dress up, and I think that just elevates the whole atmosphere, and certainly your team. And you're heading up your team, you're representing your stakeholders and your state. I say business professional for sure.
Somebody asked about these slides. The slides and recording will be available hopefully later today, if not by first thing tomorrow morning, and we'll share a link with you, but they'll be on the TEP website. Let's see. Talking points will be available they'll be available by Monday. The talking points and all the TEP materials, which will essentially be letters and some fact sheets from sponsors, highlighting their work. Let's see. We're going to share Tammie's materials. There's a substantive question about the CMAQ program and the Buy America requirements. Again, just to refresh people, that's the Federal Highway Administration Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, which has been a great source in many states, not all states, but in many states. It's up to the state's discretion how they use their CMAQ funding, but many states have used it for clean vehicles and infrastructure over the years. That program was suspended during the previous administration, and they haven't provided any money for several years due to they basically, it's kind of convoluted, but basically you need to get a waiver from arcane Buy America requirements that weren't written for vehicles in order to do that. And we had a system working during the Obama administration where basically they would approve waivers as long as vehicles were assembled in the U.S. And so basically we got language included in last year's appropriations bill that would direct the FHWA to approve waivers using the old criteria that they were using before. So that's the requirement, and we're in the process of trying to communicate with the Federal Highway Administration to find out how they plan to, restore funding and begin approving waivers again. And basically, our overall position is, the Biden administration has also made a heavy priority on Buy America, and they've, directed every agency to look at their Buy America policies and how they can be improved to, get more items made in America by American workers and American businesses. And we're supportive of that, but we don't want to see a good program that's working halted while they figure out some new guidance and new things. So our position is resume funding using the old criteria while you develop any new policies. So hopefully that answers the Buy America question. Let's see if there are any other questions.
And Ken, I'm going to emphasize to everyone, as you attend the summit, there'll be a lot of great information, and you're going to hear from our new administration. And so that's exciting. You'll have a better perspective of what they're looking for and what they're wanting. So it'll help you craft your message and be prepared to speak to that. So this is an exciting time. This is all about the work that we do. So like Wendy Defoe said, we're the cool kids on the block right now, instead of like alternative fuels. What is that? We're advanced fuels, and we're rocking it. So be sure you feel some confidence, and I can't wait to hear what everyone's experience is like. It'll be great.
Right. This is really an opportunity of a lifetime.
It is.
I mean, you really recognize the opportunity. Step up and take advantage, because, and I say that to you all individually as individual coalitions, but to us collectively as well, that these opportunities don't come along that often. I mean, as I think it was Rahm Emanuel, who was mayor of Chicago and President Obama's chief of staff, is, always remember to take advantage of a crisis. And because of the pandemic and the problem, the shape that the economy's in, that is what's gonna, that's why people are considering this massive infrastructure investment. And so that this is, the last opportunity came in 2009 on the heels of the massive economic recession of 2008, 2009, and there were major investments. And this time, I think people have learned and want to invest even more this time. And our industry is more mature now, so we're in a better position to even do more and take advantage of more opportunities. But make sure you're, as they say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So be at the table and take advantage. And all of us collectively, if we all work together, I'm confident that we can see significant increases in funding and incentives and new policies and all kinds of new opportunities. So we look forward to your participation in the summit next week and Capitol Hill meetings. There's a lot of logistical items, so please contact us if you need any help with anything. Tammie, any final words?
Just best of luck, and I wish we were all together in DC. We will be hopefully the following year. That'll be great. I think we'll appreciate it even more. Best of luck. Let me know if there's anything I can do. Again, I'll have the press release ready for you all first thing on Friday morning, so you can get that into motion, include it in your packet. And also, it'll give you an opportunity to give your own personal quote. So excited to be working on that for you, and let me know if there's anything else that we can do to support you in getting your materials together. We'll send out our deck when we're done with it, probably by tomorrow. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Ken, thank you. Good job.
You too, Tammie.
All right. Bye-bye.